Dr. Wendy is the professor of entrepreneurship and strategy and diversity at the Ted Rogers School of Management. She's also a diversity expert, and we were counting her awards. I counted 9 awards. Dr. Wendy, you think you might have more?
I'm afraid so. I'm very old.
Well, it doesn't matter.
Depends on how far back you want to go.
Well, we're going to start talking about, so you're doing 2 tracks and we're going to start talking about the sustainability. So tell us how you got interested in sustainability.
So it's interesting because, you know, when my daughter was very young, I remember being struck by generational differences. She was probably 5 or 6, and I was taking out the garbage, and she said, "Mommy, don't throw out the garbage. We cycle." And it was very clear to me at that moment, that would have been almost 30 years ago, that there had been a really big shift in sort of education attitudes and so on. And I would say that in terms of my advocacy work and the research supporting that, I've been far more preoccupied with human rights, social justice, diversity and inclusion, violence against women, economic equality, refugees, and so on. Environmental issues were never really at the top of my list, but I have a lot of people who work for me who are younger, for whom it is really an important issue. And of course, it makes sense. We have only one planet. So I had a, general awareness, general understanding, but where it became really clear to me that we needed to start digging in more deeply is we're the I'm the academic research lead for the Future Skills Center. And at the Future Skills Center, we've put a lot of focus on small, medium enterprises because in Canada, they're the engine that drives the economy. And one of the observations, whether we're talking about equity, diversity, and inclusion, whether we're talking about digitization, or whether we're talking about the shift to net zero, often small, medium enterprises are not on the agenda. The other piece, and I'm sure you'll have a chance to talk to Vicki Saunders, is one of the leading proponents for women entrepreneurs in the country, who founded SheEO, now called Coralus, very intentionally created an incubator where contributions to the Sustainable Development Goals are a part of what the businesses are focused on. So this notion of the triple bottom line, or the idea that entrepreneurs and small business need to be thinking not just about economic contributions and growth and job creation, but also their impact on the environment as well as on society, is something that's been gaining traction in recent years. And we've done quite a lot of work on what is often termed social entrepreneurship or social innovation, which has a focus typically on environmental issues, social issues, and the SDGs. And so those two things that were sort of burbling in the background. And then we started a project working with small, medium enterprises, trying to address their learning and training needs. And what kept coming up was lots of SMEs thought about environmental, social, governance issues. They knew that EDI was sort of important. They knew that climate change is an issue, and their stakeholders are increasingly concerned about things like carbon footprint. But often SMEs, especially post-COVID, are struggling just to keep the lights on. And we know that COVID was especially hard on SMEs. And so we had done quite a lot of work equipping SMEs for digitization, helping with strategies that were very concrete, very precise, and supported by training.
Around sustainability, you mean?
No, around the shift to digitization, using technology to support their goals. We had done similar work focused on equity, diversity, and inclusion, again, recognizing that small, medium enterprises often have limited resources and headspace to think about equity, diversity, and inclusion, even if they recognize it's important. And so we simply took what we understood about social innovation, organizational change, consumer behavior, and so on, and started to build platforms and tools to support small, medium enterprises in their transition to net zero. At the same time that we were continuing to do research on where do sustainability goals fit into the set of priorities for entrepreneurs and SMEs. So long answer, but I hope that paints a bit of a picture.
Yeah. Well, thanks to your daughter, obviously, you got down to this, and hopefully she now works in that field. I don't know if she's interested in that, but wouldn't that be a nice story to cap that off? Are you doing research on whether sustainability profits a small business in Canada?
That's one of the really important things. We just had a webinar recently, for example, that really focused on the business case. So with the Ottawa Chamber of Commerce and some experts talking about why SMEs need to think about this and why government needs to ensure that its policies and programs address their needs. And part of it is SMEs are often the most adversely affected by environmental change. They often have the least capacity to respond because they don't have deep pockets. And often they have, because they're really focused on short-term goals, they may not be thinking about longer-term impacts. And so there is a burning need for SMEs to be supported in transition. And we know from research, there's lots of focus on oil and gas. There's lots of focus on agriculture. There's lots of focus on the industries that are seen as construction, that are seen as really taking a heavy toll on the environment. But the reality, small medium enterprises have as big a carbon footprint as the oil and gas industry, but they're often overlooked. And the other thing that is so important is often the efforts around transition to net zero focus on things like your processes and your consumption and your carbon footprint, or your use of electricity. But where the biggest impact is in terms of SMEs is at the third level, which is how your products and services are actually used. So making sure that small, medium enterprises are not just focused on their infrastructure, reducing the impact of their buildings or their garbage or whatever, but they're also actually thinking about how they design and distribute their products and how their products are used. That becomes absolutely critical. And we have lots of really exciting examples of startups that are working in the circular economy space that are really capitalizing on that notion and developing products and services that will have a huge impact. The contribution of women in this space, because very often we focus on green tech, and green tech is often dominated by engineers, and often women are almost absent. But if you actually look at that broader conception of what it means to transition, and you start to look at, for example, women-led businesses that are creating stainless steel containers to reduce plastic waste and improve health, or women-led businesses that are creating products out of recycling. I mean, one of my favorites is the one that's making shoes out of recycled tires, or alternatives to the fast fashion economy, and so on and so forth. There are huge opportunities, very interesting places that businesses can think about innovating. But more than that, we really want also to get organizations to think about their existing processes. Where are they sourcing their products? How are they making decisions about their physical space? How are they making decisions about transportation, about packaging, about marketing, and so on? So it's sort of two basic themes. Where are the opportunities to create products and services, and how can existing companies think about reducing their carbon footprint?
So what's the one big advice that you could give to our viewers around this topic?
It seems really complicated. It seems really technical, but it's like there's only one way to eat an elephant, one spoon at a time, right? And so start somewhere, even if it's starting with very, very small steps around containers and recycling. You add up those small measures and we will actually have a big impact.